Final Fantasy VII is not even dropped yet. We get to play that on the 29th. But it's already found itself in some deep controversy. From Tifa's bust size and Eastern developers fighting back against woke, to Western reviewers calling for more. I'm Ben, this is Critical Hit, and today we're discussing the controversy surrounding Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Square Enix has been perhaps one of the most famously big Eastern developers to be infiltrated by Western woke values. Sweet Baby Inc., which we've discussed in the past, the activist group proudly displays them on their front page, and we know they were involved in part of the development of the dreaded Forspoken. I would guess it was consulting to make things less Eastern and more pandering, but we don't know for sure. I mean, given their statement that's the goal for their games, it seems likely though. But back to the failure of Forspoken, it's interesting now that the tide may be changing with Square Enix. Back in January of this year, they had a listing for jobs in their ethics department that the wording talked a lot about inclusion and diversity for Western audiences, and those seem to have vanished. Alright, now how does this relate directly to Final Fantasy VII? We know they've toned it down a bit. For instance, in the demo, you can't steal Tifa's panties from her closet. The game doesn't let you. But of course you could in the original one. But one massive change, and I guess pun intended in this case, was Tifa's chest size. In the original Final Fantasy VII Remake from 2019, a lot of fans in the series noticed her bust size had been reduced. The game was fantastic overall, and I don't think anyone made a big deal about it, but in Rebirth, it's back, and maybe even bigger than in the original. And I mean maybe because those little sprites make it fairly difficult to tell back from 1997. Either way though, this was a noticeable change coming from Square. Now don't get me wrong, I do not think this would inherently increase sales of a game. But I also think people who just like escapism in games look at this and think, man, am I ever glad this game is not pushing ideology on me, and I may buy it. Or put another way, maybe it won't make me buy it altogether, but it certainly doesn't hurt. Western developers have tried to take away the curves and feminine features of women in games, and when I see a game like Fable for instance, I think, they're going to try to make a statement, and if this is how they're going to promote it, I would rather not spend 40 hours of my time being talked down to through lectures and gaming. I get enough of that through the comments section, thank you very much. I think it's also important to note that when you see Tifa, Aerith, or Yuffie in the game, they look female. They act like traditional female. They look, walk, and talk. Unlike the Western developers, who make Lara Croft look masculine. Give her that masculine jawline, make her breasts an A cup would be generous, and just try to rid her of all the characteristics that would look female. I know this wasn't the same devs as Forspoken. This was CBU1. But this certainly does feel like Square has at least caught on to the fact that they may sell more games when you don't cater to Western journalists and social media enthusiasts who don't play your game anyways. But Estes covered this topic a few times in the past with her Stellar Blade videos, and those are a good watch if you want to take on how a woman might feel about her sex being downgraded in video games. I'll link those down in the description for those that are interested. Beside that, there are some Western journalists, as mentioned, that seem to have figured this out. Square may not be playing by their rules. They're not satisfied, and I found an article by The Gamer, and they're trying to make a case for Tifa and Aerith to be in a lesbian relationship. And tell me you never played Final Fantasy VII without telling me. But of course, Tifa and Cloud, childhood friends, shared a pretty memorable moment and promise that would contradict this. And Zack, who may or may not be alive, has always been with Aerith. But this journalist, who has never played the game, and probably never will, wants to make sure that they change this. It doesn't make sense, but they need it for their validation. I also expect calls for at the very least Vincent to be gay. His story of course wouldn't make sense at that point, and it wouldn't really matter. However, I would be surprised if they stopped there. I would love they stop pushing their politics onto a medium I enjoy, and they obviously don't, but hey, looks like the tides might be turning. I have seen some people, mostly on social media, not gaming journalists, yet, call for Tifa to be trans. This felt reminiscent of what they did to Poison from Street Fighter, but hopefully Square Enix doesn't succumb to this kind of pressure. I think we've seen the games that sell best in the last year. They're not the ones that push an agenda. Hogwarts Legacy, Baldur's Gate 3, Legends of Zelda, you know the ones. And studios should get past pushing for higher ESG scores at the cost of more sales and customer disdain. Square Enix is a big company, but with game development costs the way they are, no company can really afford big losses nowadays. We do not need another Spirits Within moment, but in the form of activism. I do not think any of what Western developers are doing is realistic. They purposefully downgrade models to make them look less feminine. And there will be calls for realism in gaming, and that's what they're gonna mean. But nobody wants it. We want to not remember how shitty life can be, enjoy our escapism and fantasy, before we have to go back to a world that can be unforgiving sometimes. You can have your fantasies, and that's okay. And I'm gonna judge you a little bit, but I certainly won't try to make you conform. You be you. Let the gamers who actually play the games, have their fantasies too. But Ethics page disappearing and them returning mostly to form for this remake does give me some hope. But that's all I got for today. If you enjoyed the video, leaving a like and subscribing really goes a long way to helping us continue what we do. If you disagree with me, that's okay too, but duke it out respectfully in the comments below. As always, I'm Ben, you've been awesome. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.